up? Happy Monday. I hope all of you are well. Excuse me. What about them Seahawks, though? Seahawks for the win yesterday in the 2026 Super Bowl. We are the champions. We took that home, and I'm so proud of us. I'm so proud of the franchise. I'm so proud of the players. I'm so proud of the 12s. Not to mention the owner is a woman who I found out yesterday who also does not endorse Donald Trump and his shenanigans. So shout out to the complete franchise. We're so happy for you guys. We're so happy for ourselves. And turns out we have a parade coming up on Wednesday. So I shared to my stories across Instagram and Facebook the details of the parade. I know back in 2014, I believe, we had a parade. It was bananas. I was able to call out and attend that. I even shared to my stories, there is a note that you could use as a template to help you call out and let your employer know you will not be in attendance, because I believe the parade starts at 11 p.m. and then they mapped out the whole entire parade from start to finish. So make sure you check out my stories. Make sure you're following, obviously, the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks are such a slept-on team, and we're considered the underdogs. And so I just love us, that we are so resilient and that we still push through gracefully. Shout out to us again. I'm trying to now share this to make sure that the people in our community are watching. If you can, please also share. This is how you can support me as a podcaster, as a creator, is share the content, even if it doesn't necessarily jive with what you like to consume on a regular basis. You can still show your support of me if you so choose by doing so on. See, this is what I didn't like. It has me in a, I don't know, and it has me so small that I feel like I'm going to go back out and start over again. I tried something differently for vertical video, and I only chose that for Substack in general. I did not choose this small video for, there we go. That was my doing. So I have vertical video on Substack, and I have landscape on Facebook on YouTube and on LinkedIn. So now I need to make sure that I go back and say what I meant to say in the beginning when I was so small. But shout out to the Seattle Seahawks. Make sure you check out my stories, because I shared some links. We are having a parade this Wednesday. I was on a call earlier today. It was at 7 a.m. and it's on Fanbase. So Fanbase I love because they have social audio spaces. So it's a totally different vertical than maybe you are accustomed to, but it's great for those of you who like to listen auditorially. Those of you who are auditory learners. So I shared a call. It happens every Monday at 7 a.m. And the topic was the marketing of the Super Bowl's commercials this year, and whether you guys like them, whether you dislike them. But they also pick so much on the Seattle Seahawks. We're considered to be the underdogs, but I say we keep winning gracefully. I love Marshawn Lynch's commercial. Shout out to Nike. Shout out to Marshawn Lynch. And then I shouted out, of course, the Seattle Seahawks franchise, the woman who is the owner of the team right now, and all of the 12s, including myself. Make sure you check out my stories for the links and the updates about the parade. They have everything mapped out. People were saying we're so boring and blah, 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 but I loved yesterday. It's not my extensive list or the top one, but it's definitely in the top 10 or top 5, actually. Top 5 faves for me. Nonetheless, let's get into it. This is your Monday weekly broadcasting, and today's topic is about turning consistency into cash flow. If you don't know, I'm Danny Marie, podcast bestie, giving you podcast tips, podcast news, podcast vocab, all in this weekly briefing every Monday around 1 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you are an underdog like my Seattle Seahawks team, if you are an indie podcaster, maybe an introverted creator, you're trying to build something real without a huge audience, a big budget, or industry cosign, if that's you, then you're in the right place. Because this is not just a live stream, this is a community built for the underdogs, such as yourself, such as myself, indie creators, introverted podcasters, introverted creators. You're all welcome to join us in our group, plantapodcast.com. That is PLAN space TO space PODCAST. But I'll put it up on the screen so that it's easier to follow. And there's more information about our group on our website. You could also just comment the word Plan to Podcast, and I will send you the link directly in the chats. Make sure, again, if you love and support me, that you share this with a friend, even if it's not something that's necessarily your jam. Still share it. There's someone out there who has a voice and is looking for a platform of podcasters and creators that are going to wrap their arms around them, show them some support, show them some love, provide the resources, and be the accountability group that maybe they're looking for. So thank you for sharing in advance. Okay, so today we're doing a podcast clip. We're doing a podcast tip. We're going to do a podcast topic, some podcast news, everything podcasting. My maybe number 5 love right now. But before we get into our podcast topic, I wanted to share this clip with you guys because as my reaction video, this was one of the things that kind of stopped me in my tracks. And I think this is something you all will come to appreciate too. And it's just a quick clip, words of encouragement as a creator. And it's also in line with the topic of the hour, which is, consistency. Consistency is key, slow and steady growth. I had everything queued up, of course. And now I've lost my clip, but here we go. But it's right here. Let's see if we can share the screen so that you guys can see with me. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we link this in the description so you have easy access to this link too if you just wanted it for your references. But it's literally so quick. Okay.
Everyone wants to win fast. They want success in 6 months, fame in a year, and freedom before they've even learned discipline. The truth is, you can't rush greatness. You can't microwave purpose. You can't fast forward through pain, failure, and patience, because those are the very things that build you. I've watched thousands of people quit just inches away from breaking through, all because they couldn't handle waiting. They thought slow progress meant no progress. Wrong.
Slow progress doesn't mean no progress. And that's something that we all have to understand. Do we get to share it? All right. I hope you guys were able to see that share. Again, it should be linked in the description. But what I loved about that episode or that clip, excuse me, because it is a full motivational clip, but I just obviously showed you a small snippet of that longer clip. But greatness is not built overnight. I think that's something that we often get misconstrued, especially when we see other people on social media and we try to compare ourselves, that whole comparative narrative that sometimes we let run on autopilot in our heads. Greatness is built over time. And that's why I loved Nipsey Hussle. It is a marathon, not a sprint. Real growth is something that you build. It's something that you have to build up the stamina for. It's something that you have to build up the endurance for. It's something that you have to build the community over time. It's something you have to build up the skill set, the discipline for. The missing piece in most growth conversations is ownership. And that's something else that we will really want to nail home and drill for you guys, that yes, you're building something. It's slow momentum right now, but eventually you're building something that you could package and that you could eventually create your own exit strategy, and you could sell all of your assets or sell your platform. Start thinking of podcasting that way, where this is something that you're building for the long run. Attention without ownership is just borrowed attention. And we are oftentimes spending a lot of times on other platforms. And like, for example, TikTok, when the first time TikTok disappeared for like less than 12 hours, everybody was in a frenzy. They didn't know what they were going to do. They never set themselves up for success. They didn't take their business offline or to another platform. They weren't building their own email lists. And there is a missed opportunity anytime you're building something that's not built for sustainability, number one, and ownership, number two, or more importantly. So your 24-hour action step, this is something I want you guys to take away. Use this for the thing that you do for the rest of the week. Deepen your trust with your listeners, the listeners that you already have. I know the goal is to get more people to follow you, but also think about nurturing the followers that you have right now today. Deepen your rapport with them, deepen the trust with them, showing up consistency, because that's the topic of the week. And then asking them, what do you need from me? How am I serving you? Am I hitting all of the marks? Is there anything else that I'm not thinking about? Anything that I've overlooked? Are there any questions that you have? Would you guys like to do something else I haven't already considered? How about let's all meet up in a private social gathering, and whatever it takes for you to deepen your relationship with your audience is what I think you should do. You know what that looks like based on your platform. And then always ask them, am I serving you, and how can I serve you better? Because at the end of the day, the community is what is going to help you be sustainable, be long-term, generate more momentum, refer you to their friend circle, and all of those things. So are you building for applause, or are you building for ownership? And then what does that look like? If you can't define it, then my suggestion is to go back to the drawing board. Mind you, we do also offer a service where we're helping you build podcast plans. These are things that you can look to as a roadmap. So if you still are having a difficult time connecting with your core audience, or you haven't even identified who your core audience is, then you certainly need to connect with us. And again, refer to our website, plantopodcast.com, for more information. All right, let's get into podcast news. We're talking about indie podcasts, supporting indie podcasters, proof the ecosystem is starting to respect niche credibility, and that you don't have to be big to matter. Niche credibility beats mass appeal. So that means when you're speaking to a very specific core audience, and you are working on cultivating those relationships and nurturing those relationships and helping them solve a problem, and you are able to offer them a solution to that problem, and you understand your unique value proposition in the report, and relationship that you've established with your core audience, that is what is going to help. Again, you build consistency. So that's why we're going to highlight the indie podcast supporting indie podcasters. We're also going to talk quickly about the Golden Lobes return with cash prizes, speaking on awards, visibility, legitimacy, and advertisers. Understanding recognition begets revenue. So when you are cultivating your audience and you're building over time, whether that is a slow burn, slow progression, it's still movement forward. Then how are you then able to capitalize and monetize on that? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And the podcast Super Bowl ad moment, when value is real and opportunities scale to the biggest stages. Again, turning your consistency into cash flow. So that was not meant to rhyme, but it just so happened that it did. Let's see here. You know what? There we go. I'm like, I had all of this ready and queued up. So this is according to a medium.com post speaking on the topic of the 4 best indie podcasts that support indie podcasters. So if you're looking for indie platforms outside of course, Plan to Podcast, our community on Facebook, and then our website, plantopodcast.com, here are more options. The 5 of the best indie podcasts about podcasting. That piece focused on 5 excellent podcasts that support the industry and support indie podcasters. So number 1 is created by True Fans, truefans.fm, that spotlights independent podcast creators and music artists, offering them increased visibility and a platform to connect with their fans. Hosted by Sam and Claire, the weekly show features a new creator, discusses platform updates for monetization and discovery, and explores trends in the podcasting and music industries. Listeners can support the podcast through micro payments called SATs or SATs, not to be confused, I guess, with the state test, and leave feedback via super comments and engage with hosts on social media. So that is Creators by True Fans or truefans.fm. Also, Your Mic, the creator/host Freddie Cruz offers insights, tactics, and mindset strategies. Each episode features practical advice to help listeners build and grow a top 1% podcast. Now, if you're a podcaster searching for a path to grow, join Freddie as he shares his experience and knowledge to guide you through the podcasting journey. Next, 1-minute podcast tips, which I absolutely love, something that is bite-sized and palatable for some of you guys like myself who have ADHD, and is designed for people who want to be better podcasters, considering that millions are either podcasting now or have tried their hand at podcasting, and that's a potentially large and motivated audience. And then we have The School of Podcasting, which is a podcast that helps you discover the power of podcasting. Founder and host Dave Jackson says it helps you avoid the common mistakes that podcasters make, from planning, producing, and promoting your podcast, along with all the tools and techniques. If you're looking to start a podcast or a veteran podcaster, you can catch the great insights with this free podcast. Now, clearly, these shows are to help podcasters focus on independent podcasts. And do independent podcasts need all this help because they are inferior network-supported shows? I think the reality is we just want the support because we aim to be here for a very long time. And therefore, as indie creators, we know that there is a formula to longevity. And so we're taking all of the advice that we can get. So I gave you the 5. Again, we also would love to have you in our community, Plan to Podcast. You can find us at the website, plantopodcast.com, or you can join our community Plan to Podcast on Facebook group. And I was looking for the link again so I can share that across the screen. But as we do that, the next article about the Golden Globes returning for 2026. So I actually am not familiar, but it sounds like this is a United Kingdom or UK comedy podcast award show, and there are accepting entries. So in 2025, winners included both solo creators and global platforms. The awards now have a wider number of categories, including a Best International Show for shows made outside of the US or UK, and the prize isn't just a trophy, but I think they said 5,000 pounds worth of prizes. And I remember, like, in a few episodes prior to this one, we had an episode about, or we had a segment about another platform that basically turned out to be fraud, allegedly. And so go back and listen to that former episode or find those clips. But here we have the Golden Globes returning for 2026 and has been vetted and is a credible platform. We also mentioned in that previous segment a few lives ago that some of them are also charging for your attendance when it comes to these award shows. So you need to be careful and be mindful of that, but do your due diligence at the end of the day. Finally, the podcast news article we wanted to mention about the Super Bowl ad slot. So in a bold move, according to the Quaza.io website, in a bold move that underscores the evolution landscape of tech media, the TBPN podcast hosted by Jordy Hayes and John Coogan has secured a regional Super Bowl ad slot for 2026, airing during the National Football League's championship game on February 9, 2026. So actually that was yesterday's date, February 8th. So this 15-second spot isn't pushing products. Instead, it's a classy tribute to the show's community, featuring logos from dozens of companies tied to the high-profile guests. This love letter to the tech ecosystem will reach millions of viewers in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, highlighting the reciprocal value between TBPN and its network. So TBPN, according to this article, launched just over a year ago and has rapidly ascended to become one of the hottest, most niche podcasts in the tech scene, described as technology's daily show. The YouTube channel boasts 48.7K subscribers and over 1.8K videos streaming live every weekday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, what sets TBN apart is its lightning fast response to industry news, attracting a roster of prominent entrepreneurs, investors, and innovators as daily guests. The podcast format, hours-long discussions in real time, thrives on unfiltered insights, making it a must-watch for Silicon Valley insiders. So, love that. That is your podcast news for today, highlighting, obviously, the Super Bowl. Did you guys catch that ad? Also highlighting indie podcast platforms for indie podcasters and the award show, because we also need our love and recognition. And we were talking about in a few lives previous to this one, how you have to be careful of which platforms you are on and which ones you pay for. All right. So I would be remiss if I don't do our podcast MVP shout outs. So again, we give love to all of the members within our group. I wanted to shout out a few key things within our group. So I need to use my phone for a frame of reference, because every Monday, there's a new post that goes out talking about the new members in our group. So I want to give them a shout out. So shout out to all of I'm using my, let's see if we can dim the lights, turn off the lights, dim the lights momentarily so you all can see this, and you can't. But anyways, if you go to our group, you'll see this post that was just added today about 7 hours ago. So shout out to all of our newest members: Brittany Holmes, Denise Royal, Ariam, Diary of D'Angela, Chrissy, Sherwana, Jasmine, Hugo, Lamar, Daryl, Lisa, Kwame, Mabal, Hassan, Martin, William, Tanver, Selena, Robert, Nizmil, Castaneda, Martin, Jennifer. So we appreciate you. I also want to give a special shout out to all of my moderators. We have Mahogany, we have DC, we have Jonathan, we have Marquise, we have Micah, and we have our resident editor. And I was just trying to think if I forgot anyone, but I believe everyone's covered. We are also looking for one more moderator. The goal is to fill in our Tuesday slot. So you would basically be responsible on Tuesdays to provide some podcasting related content for the group. And we will obviously give the option to whoever reaches out to us first. And if you are already a part of our community, we will obviously give you the opportunity above anyone that's not already a part of our group. So the benefit to you joining as a moderator is you obviously get to be in front of an audience of 30,000. Sorry. Whoa. I think I was hopeful, wishing, and speaking something into existence, but we only have 3,000. And not only because we love our 3,000 and we try to keep it very niche and we try to keep it very tight. Pause. But we try to keep the group small and intentional. And so we're grateful of our 3,000 members. But as a moderator, you have one day you're coming to talk about maybe something that relates to podcasting, helping our podcasters, offers your insight, your expertise. You probably have been podcasting for 3+ months. You've learned a few things and you're ready to share your knowledge with the group. And you're a part of a team of different collaborators and moderators, and you probably have an expertise or a skill set that you've built in podcasting that you're sharing. So maybe you're great at editing, maybe you're great at promotion or something, and you're sharing that with the group at large. And for the most part, you also have free reign to promote your product, brand, or services. So if you're interested, reach out. Again, you can go to plantopodcast.com and you can use the button at the very top that says ask a question in order to get in touch with me, because that will send me an email directly. And then you can erase the subject line to type, moderator for the group and express why you think you would be a great fit. So that is plantopodcast.com. All right, so soon we're going to get into the podcast topic of the hour for the remainder of the 20 or 30 minutes or so. But I also like to give you a vocabulary word. So this is the mic drop term of the hour, CPM, cost per minute. So cost per 1,000 listens, meaning you don't get paid for having a podcast, but you do get paid for having listeners advertisers can count on. So maybe $20 per CPM times 5,000 downloads equals an extra $100 per ad that is placed on your platform. I know Spreaker does a really good job of ad placement and monetization. But just remember, monetization starts with understanding the math. So that formula is key. And I'm going to actually try to drop that in the chat now for your frame of reference. Sorry. All right. So you should see that in the description, specifically over on YouTube. And it is iDating Marie on YouTube. All right. Now, again, since the topic of conversation is consistency in turning consistency into cash flow, understanding fast numbers may impress the people, but slow numbers will pay the people. So learning the balance between those two things, I think they're both equally important, but at the end of the day, the goal is monetization. And a lot of us are in a microwave society where we want to get money quickly, but you're likely going to make a large impression, but fewer people will actually convert. You need to be working on building the number of people who are your avid supporters who are going to help pay you. Slow growth builds trust. Slow growth builds relationship. Slow growth equals conversion. And conversion raises your CPM, your CPM, cost per listeners, okay? What is real podcast growth? That's what we're going to get into for the next 30 minutes. What is real podcast growth? So, quick story, personal anecdote. I've done, and I've shared this many a times, that I've done about now 9 or 10 podcast shows of my own. The first one was the Mother and Daughter Duo podcast. We've had Motivation Monday Mommy Meetup. We've had Life Unscripted with Danny Marie, Throw It Back Thursday, Follow Me Friday, Plan to Podcast. And then we had Talk Tacoma. Now we have Whole City Hustle. Then we have Podcasting for Newbies, which we turned back into Plan to Podcast, because overall, that is our umbrella company. That is our unique value proposition. It's helping you plan out and map out your journey through podcasting, building for the long term. And through that, showing up consistently, we've been able to understand and carve out our own lane. We've been able to establish ourselves in this space. So now I am an expert in podcasting, and I study, I try to teach, I coach, I mentor, all of those things. And that has been a part of my success journey. That has been a part of my growth. What I learned is that most podcasters, they will start off, they'll be very excited about starting. They'll get to that 7 episode mark, and they don't see any quick return on their investment. Therefore, they back out. Life gets in the way, they reprioritize what's important to them, and they don't give themselves enough time to build a solid, sustainable platform. One that builds community, and again, deepening your relationship with your audience. And so therefore, you're not getting listener retention. You're not able to convert and get listeners to act. You're not building a listener identity. That is where a lot of podcasters fall short. And one of the things I see often in our group is people ask, I'm not getting the listeners, I'm not getting the follows. And then when I kind of quietly go look on their platform, I realize they don't really talk about their podcast on their main feed. You don't really see them front facing, talking about their podcast. You don't see them building community in any other spaces. Therefore, you're not going to get people to show up. You're not going to get people to inquire. You're not going to get people to follow through. You won't be able to convert them. You're not even going to be able to monetize much if you're not intentionally working on podcast growth. Podcast growth looks like you showing up on a regular basis, you talking about your podcast multiple times throughout the week, you having a language and messaging for how you introduce your podcast and how you convert an audience or observer into a listener. So that is where your answer lies. It is in how much work have you put in to build your podcast listener base. That's where you're going to see scalability. That's where you're going to see the growth. I suggest again that you reach out to us, plantopodcast.com, if you're looking for a roadmap that helps you address this issue. If this is your bottleneck, you're not able to get listener growth, you're able to show up consistently for the podcast, but you can't show up and get the listeners to follow and buy into what it is you do, what you talk about, what you offer, then that's a clear sign that your podcast platform and your podcast promotion is struggling, and that's where you need to make your changes. Therefore, reach out, get a podcast plan, which is absolutely free. If you go through a 15 to 30-minute consultation, all we do is ask that you complete a questionnaire. We help you address everything on that questionnaire, and we can take it a step further. There are options to move forward, but at the very base level, we're going to help you create a plan. You can refer to that plan at any time, but that is going to help address the bottleneck in your ecosystem. You're building infrastructure at the end of the day. And if you're not actively working on how you show up, how intentional you are when you do show up, how you're building an audience, you're not going to see much reward or ROI. So that's the biggest thing that we want to highlight. Podcast growth. What does that look like? And as a matter of fact, before we close, let's work on a little exercise. I want to try to do a case study about podcast growth. And so I'm going to actually use my ChatGPT and specifically speak to, I don't have a name for my ChatGPT, and I did not set up a voice profile or an avatar. So I just occasionally will use the voice prompt, but for exercises like this, I'm going to use it. So let's see. Hey, chat. So the goal today, we're on live. You can say hi to the people, by the way.
Hey, everyone tuning in. I'm here live with Danny, and we're about to make some magic happen. So stick around. You don't want to miss this.
Yes, we are. So I am building up this idea that consistency can turn into cash flow, but first you need to build real podcast growth. So for starters, let's try to define what podcast growth is and then make the distinction of what real podcast growth is specifically.
All right, let's cut through the fluff. Podcast growth broadly is any increase in listeners, downloads, or visibility. But real growth, that's the sustainable kind. It's not a one-off viral spike. It's steadily attracting the right listeners, your target audience, who come back episode after episode. It's deepening trust, driving engagement, and creating long-term opportunities, aka cash flow.
Love that. We've said some of the same things. Now, is there a formula, or what things do you think that a person should be doing regularly to build real podcast growth?
You bet there's a formula. Think of it as a rhythm you can't skip a beat on. First, consistent publishing. Show up like clockwork. Second, audience engagement. Don't just talk at them, interact with them. Third, quality content. Solve problems or entertain consistently. Fourth, strategic promotion. Get out there on socials, cross-promo, and maybe guest on other shows. Finally, data-driven refinement. Analyze, tweak, and evolve. Keep that cycle spinning, and you'll have real growth.
All right, now can you please create 2 case studies? We're not going to say which one of the 2 is actively working on real podcast growth. We're just going to explain the scenario and then let the listeners be the judge.
All right, let's set the stage. Case study 1. Imagine a podcast that's been publishing every week for a year. Their numbers are steady, but they rarely ask listeners for feedback. They focus on broad, trendy topics that pull in spikes of random listeners, but lack a loyal core audience. They've had a few viral moments, but no long-term engagement strategy. Case study 2. This podcast releases every other week, but with laser focus on a specific niche. They involve their audience, polls, Q&As, and listener shoutouts. Their growth is slower but steady. They've built a loyal community that shares their episodes and buys their merch. Now, listeners, who's building the real deal?
All right, so let's repeat that really quickly. And then let's also tie it back to the formula that chat just gave us. So first, let's look at the formula. And then after the case studies, I'll try to explain each one and give you some clear, tangible ideas and or platforms or resources that you can use. So the formula: first, consistent publishing. Show up like clockwork. Second, audience engagement. Don't just talk at them, interact with them. Third, quality content. Solve problems or entertain consistently. Fourth, strategic promotion. Get out there on socials, cross promo, and maybe be a guest on other shows. Now, here were the different case studies, the two actually. Imagine a podcast that's been publishing every week for a year. Their numbers are steady, but they rarely ask listeners for feedback. They focus on broad, trendy topics that pull in spikes of random listeners, but lack a loyal core audience. They've had a few viral moments, but no long-term engagement strategy. Case study 2, this podcast releases every other week, but with laser focus on a specific niche. They involve their audience, including polls, Q&As, and listener shoutouts. And their growth is slower but steady. They've built a loyal community that shares their episodes and buys their merch. So which of these two do you think is the real deal? All right, now let's go back. It says the formula is first, consistent publishing. So a lot of the times, the reason why you're not able to show up consistently is because, number one, you never started off with enough content. And so you started hitting the ground running, full steam ahead. You weren't adequately prepared. There was maybe a loss in the family, or maybe work schedule got in the way, or maybe your children, you had to prioritize their needs first. And therefore, you weren't able to consistently post, or at least consistently record and then post. And so you find yourself behind a lot of the times. And that impacts the day and time that you say you're supposed to show up. So consistent publishing looks like maybe you started off with a weekly podcast at a weekly specific day and time, but now it's more sporadic and people haven't been able to keep up. Like when they go to look for you, you're not there. You post months later, days later. And that's a problem because we do have so many competitors in the space, whether that is in your category or podcasting in general. And so someone else who maybe doesn't have the best or a better platform as you do, they still showed up consistently and they were able to win over your audience. Ways that you can show up on a consistent basis is pre-recording your content. Make sure you have at least 3 episodes that are in the backlog, or we like to say cache. Have a cache of episodes that are built up. For example, when I first started in my very first podcast, I recorded 20 episodes before I launched the first one. I'm just suggesting you start with 3. And then that always helps you keep up and stay afloat. And then if you can also use tools that help you schedule your content. So for instance, you have 3 episodes in your cache, schedule those in advance. And so you don't have to worry about, oh yeah, I have to upload every Wednesday, forgetting that today is Wednesday, and now you've missed an opportunity to show up consistently for your audience. So pre-record and schedule your content, and you can use tools to schedule your content in advance. And I specifically recommend using tools like Red Circle, Substack, Buzzsprout, to name a few. Those are hosting podcast platforms. And you do have the ability with those 3 platforms to schedule your content in advance. The second thing in the formula is audience engagement. So not just talking at them, but interacting with them. So I would say use ChatGPT to come up with a regular flow chart. We also have charts and resources again on our website, plantopodcast.com. But you could potentially do polls for engagement. Make sure you're in the comments. If you have anyone commenting and leaving you comments and reviews, make sure you are saying thank you. make sure you're asking questions about the episode. How did you like the episode? What did you glean from the episode? What can be improved? Or something not so obvious, but just ways to point back to your former episode. You can use things like, did you guys listen to the episode, and leave them breadcrumbs, like a keyword or a word that they can come back and mention in the comments. Those types of things are ways that you can stay engaged and on top of mind for your audience. But to repeat back, give them keywords that they can report back to in the comment section. Give them polls. Or if you can't come up with any of these ideas, use ChatGPT to help you think these things out. Number 3, quality content. Quality, not just in the production, but also, are you helping them solve a real problem? So for me, as a podcast coach and mentor, I try to only do episodes that are anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes long, so that it's something clear, something simple, and something that is tangible for them to apply in real time. Too much information for some people is information overload, which could be a deterrent for some audience listeners. So just making sure you deliver by giving them things that is palatable for them. 4, strategic promotion. Not only should you just be promoting on social media or promoting in person, my thought process is that you should be doing multiple things simultaneously for it to be effective. So you should be on social media, on the top 3 platforms. Your audience likes to hang out. You should be in person. You should be doing webinars on top of sharing on social media. You should have a funnel. You should have an email list that you're building. You should have a Facebook community. You should have a private community like on Patreon. You should just be meeting people in all of the places and multiple places at the same time, just so that you have greater reach and greater visibility and more touch points for your listeners. And then finally, data-driven refinement. So checking your analytics, whatever platform you're using, like we mentioned before, Substack or Buzzsprout, you should be looking at your dashboard on a frequent basis so you make sure you're still hitting all of the marks and you're still on trend. So not chasing the trendy topics, but that you're on trend for building a platform that's going to be sustainable. So are you getting upward mobility? Is there constant growth? Are you getting an uptick in your numbers? That should be constant move and push forward. And anytime you hit a snafu or anytime there's stagnation, you should be revisiting the numbers and try to duplicate what worked well for you. So that is the formula. And then I would add, obviously, case study number 2 is probably the better of the 2 scenarios. Even though they release every other week, they still have a laser focus on their specific niche. They have mastered involving their audience through polls, questions and answers, and listener shout-outs. And they're still seeing, again, growth in their numbers. Though it is slowly building, it is steady, and that's key. So they've built a loyal listener base, and you can't ask for anything more than an invested listener base. All right, so just to recap, we talked about some news. We gave you a podcast vocabulary term. We gave shout outs within the members of our community. We get to talk about the 5 things in the formula to help you build a sustainable podcast, to help you get real listener growth or real podcast growth. We looked at some case studies. I don't think there's anything else we need to touch on. So we were able to clear the room in 50 minutes. So we hit all of the talking points in today's episode. Make sure again that if you need help with any of the things that we mentioned, that you reach out to us, plantapodcast.com. If you need any resources, plantapodcast.com. If you want to get these type of shout outs, make sure you're part of the community, plantapodcast.com. And then if you need a podcast plan, again, plantapodcast.com if we didn't already say it before. I am Danny Marie, the podcast bestie, your podcast mentor. I'm here to help you every step of the way. If you are an introverted or indie podcaster and you're looking for a community that can support you on your journey, hold you accountable, provide the tools, education, and resources in an entertaining way, such as today's live, make sure you come back next week, Monday, 1:00 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, for another weekly broadcast. We're so happy that you tuned in, and we'll see you next week.